Hello everyone, this is part 39 of What If Naruto Was Abused and Trained by Madara Uchiha, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Hagoromo looked down on the world. It was so much quiet, however, there were many tensions that lied within the corners of most villages. From where he looked, beneath the imperial palace, the imperial kingdom lied still. There was so much peace within the city that it gave him hope that this world would finally stop with its wars and learn to live in peaceful ways. The people within Naruto's kingdom were like one big happy family, a clan in the shinobi ways. The main and branch family get along. No one was as to the other, and leaders didn't show favoritism. The kingdom was stable. However, Hagoromo didn't actually like Naruto's attitude in all these. When his underlings ask him how to proceed on to the future, he merely tells them to do as they like. It isn't supposed to be like that for a leader. A leader is supposed to have vision, and be the driver to move his people forward. The leader is the one supposed to take charge of everything, and lead his people. Naruto did things differently. He didn't actually do anything, and that was what worried the sage. Naruto permitted those he worked with to do anything they felt as right. He was even positive that even if it was something that Naruto wouldn't do himself, he still wouldn't forbid him from doing it. As long as they felt it was right, he would allow them to do as they please. What eased his worries was the fact that those people Naruto had decided to work with were good people and great leaders. He wasn't completely sure about Nagato and Gurren, but he had no doubt with Mei and Gaara. The two were good people before his eyes, and he believed that those people could do so much in this world. If a world was to be shaped by those two, then he wouldn't have to worry much. Perhaps visiting those two would do well. Seeing them in person and speaking to them would clear some thoughts. However, Naruto would have to agree to something like that. Hagoromo turned around from the edge of Naruto's Sky Island. He felt Naruto's wholeness return to the throne room. It was best he get some things off his sea before anything happens. The legendary sage blurred into existence within the throne room. Naruto was sitting comfortably, staring at him with impassiveness. Naruto is able to reveal himself to other people, however, his real body always remained here, eyes closed. It wasn't that he was sleeping. Hagoromo had once tried to speak to him and he got a response. The response wasn't just the one he liked. He guessed that being omnipresent changed Naruto in some ways, and it took some effort for him to maintain his form without causing destruction. Nature was as powerful, and since Naruto controlled natural chakra around the world, it would prove as if he suddenly slipped. Since the natural chakra is one with him, it would react to his mood. So far, Naruto seems to be handling the pressure quite well. Speak your mind, Hagoromo, Naruto stated in a slight inviting tone. He knew that the sage had some things to say. Over the past days, the sage has been staring at him inventively as though trying to get into his head to read what he was going to do next. It must be worrying for the sage, as a part of him feared that he may one day wake up on the wrong side of the bed and decide to go berserk around the world, destroying anything he didn't like. For someone possessing immeasurable power, turning the world into war zone was a simple trick to him, and Hagoromo feared that the sage couldn't quite trust him. If there was something Naruto had discovered about himself, it was that he was somewhat predictable. So much that Hagoromo shouldn't really be worried. Naruto could deal with both Iwa and Kumogakuya if they threatened to do something to his country. As of now, he dealt with all major threats to his country and he didn't have anyone to rival him in terms of power. Hagoromo wouldn't be wrong to say that he was supreme without an equal. The sage became thoughtful, trying to think of words to say. Naruto spoke. Words were bubbling inside of him, his tongue enjoyed clicking too much these days. He didn't understand it fully, but he found talking to be a joy and words just seemed to seep out of his lips without complaints. Hagoromo, you don't think highly of me. It wasn't a question that Naruto put to the sage, it was a statement. I don't particularly care for what you think of me. I hardly care for what anyone thinks of me. I have told you before, talking with you is always fun, and so I will talk with you. I know what you want to say to me. Hagoromo didn't even twitch. The holes inside his ears became large again, and the Rinnegan zoomed onto Naruto's lips. He didn't want to miss anything. He would listen to the voice of Naruto while reading his lips. The eyes of the blonde would reveal nothing to him. He didn't seem to hold any emotions inside of his eyes. What sticks to the definition of a human, Hagoromo? Naruto asked. You aren't something that defines a human. The sage started tonelessly, but before he could continue on, Naruto spoke again. He wasn't satisfied with the man's introduction. There is your problem, Hagoromo, Naruto started quietly. You don't look at the world in the right way. Your entire outlook of the world was befitting for a sage before I came to existence. But now you look at me, the dread I could birth within the hearts of humans, my power. My existence has warped your thinking and now you mostly focus on me. Why don't you just treat me as an invisible factor that can't bend the ways of men forcefully? If you begin to look at things like that, everything will change, and you won't obsess so much over what I could do next. Despite being on checkmate, you are still trying to find a way to get back to the game. But I must ask you, what is it that you want to fight for? Hagoromo narrowed his eyes. He couldn't put Naruto's existence as an unproblematic factor. He couldn't do that, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't. Naruto was also the one who made the shinobi world what it was today, and he would continue to influence it as long as he was alive. Even though he didn't actually do anything, his existence shaped so many things. It was just impossible to disregard Naruto's existence, not in this world. Perhaps Naruto wasn't saying that to him, even though the words read that way. Could he be telling him that he shouldn't worry about him, Naruto, doing something to change the world in a forceful way? Could he be saying that he would just continue to exist without forcing things to be in his liking? What was there to guarantee that he won't snap one day and change things? Hagoromo shook his head. It was impossible for someone like Naruto to snap. His mind was a combination of two great minds, and he was certain that there were failsafes set to activate if something like that happened. Yes, Naruto would go that far if it was something that he was doing because of frustrations. He, however, wouldn't put in failsafe if it was something he'd been planning from the beginning. Your existence is a factor that can't be discarded. No matter how many times I wish you didn't exist, I can't erase my thoughts of you, I can't. You are a factor that is and will always be, as long as you breathe, Hagoromo finally responded in a firm tone. As long as Naruto lived, and nothing changed, he would always be worried. But as it seems, he would be worried for all eternity since the Emperor was immortal. The immortality means that he cannot and his existence will always influence the shinobi world. If only there was a way to ensure that the Emperor could live for a given time. I see, Naruto said. Well, that will become a problem for you since I can't be K. Not even you can do it. The words left Naruto's mouth smoothly before he paused for a moment. There was no human who could K him, let alone fatally wound him. He was a being beyond human comprehension. The power he held was far too great for any human to even begin to measure up to. Even if Madara were to return from the again, he wouldn't do anything to him. Continuing from where he left off, Naruto spoke again. Since you can't look past my existence, I'll tell you this, Hagoromo, humans are beings filled with emotions, a heart, body and soul. Emotions form a strong basis for the human mind to think. Although many call themselves emotionless, emotions influence every action they take. One may discard emotions, but as long as you once had them, traces of their existence will always remain. People who lose their emotions are often called demons because of their lack of emotions. Emotions make humans what they are. Every human has emotions, some just choose to show them while others choose against it. The ideals and environment of a human will determine how they will interpret emotions and how they will allow them to influence their choices. People are unique because of their ideals, interpretation of emotions, and definition of what is right and wrong. A human is a being that is full of ideals, emotions, governed by a set of principles of what falls under the concept of what is right and wrong. Hagoromo looked at Naruto carefully after he heard those words. What did this have to do with anything? As far as he was concerned, Naruto claimed to have lost all emotions. What did emotions have to do with him, then, if he claimed to dismiss them? Where are you going with this? Hagoromo questioned in a tone of seriousness. If you take the emotions of a human, you are left with a shell of what used to be a human being. Emotions form an integral part of humanity, and without them, a person can't live in society and be accepted wholly. Naruto started calmly. I say I have lost all emotions, but that is not the entire truth. As long as a part of me remains human, I'll have emotions. The emotions just won't affect me whatsoever. As you are, you can't live with other people. You can't live as a human in the human world. Whether you have emotions or not, it means little to you. You aren't the one to allow emotions to cloud your judgment, Hagoromo stated, catching a glimpse of what Naruto was trying to say. The day Naruto became one with the Juubi, he lost his humanity. He may have some bits of emotions because he was alive as a human for some time. The other thing that made Naruto a danger to humanity was with the way he handled emotions. Yes, he had some difficulties in understanding them, and he also failed to properly show them. Naruto couldn't show affection properly because he didn't know how. But that was Naruto of the past. Becoming one with his mother, Hagoromo figured that Naruto inherited his mother's experiences with emotions. If there was something that his mother wasn't afraid of showing, it was her emotions. That attribute must have been imprinted within Naruto's soul, and if that is so, the Emperor must be keeping them under the table. A being full of mysteries such as Naruto could do something like that quite easily. Yes, I can't live as a human in this state, and this becomes a problem I'd not thought I would be forced to solve, Naruto admitted. I'm not human, with the little emotions I have, I can't live in society. The God part of me sees most human activities as trivial, and refuses to do anything that is possible to humans. I find it hard to do things that a mere human can do, I think they are beneath me. Hagoromo wasn't encouraging in his response. With that kind of attitude, I'm not surprised. You carried your pride high above all things, and your ego is in abundance as your chakra. You are smart, but sometimes your arrogance and pride stand in the way. The sage shook his head. A compliment from my predecessor. Naruto looked amused. Perhaps it is my arrogance and pride that has left me in this position. I did tell you that things moved a bit faster than I'd anticipated. You see, Hagoromo, my plan was to eventually become like this, however, not before I'd lived happily as a human. I was powerful and my personality was set in a way that I could live at Konoha being its leader, even though I hated those people, and still be happy. Even if Konoha's people didn't approve of me, it wouldn't matter. Being as powerful as I was, they wouldn't oppose me. Being leader of Konoha, I could teach those filthy humans some humility, and if I failed after a few years, I would relinquish my humanity and teach them the hard way. The Imperial Kingdom would be where I would spend my days after Konoha, after being happy. However, with Madara's early return, I was forced to act quick. That man could have killed me if I'd not consumed Kaguya. Another factor that forced me to act quick was that I'd actually grown impatient with Konoha. How did he expect to live happily when surrounded by people who hated him? Hagoromo thought, shaking his head. So you are now left with a dilemma. You aren't human, and you skipped a part that is important to you. To be able to live the part you skipped, you have to somehow become human again. Hagoromo became thoughtful for a few moments before continuing. Well, I guess things did turn out better. You can be happier in your kingdom than you would have been if you were at Konoha. A problem still persists though, how will you become human again? Naruto nodded, the sage was spot on. Before we get to that, I want to make the effort to make you understand something. I don't plan to eat all humans under my authority. I'll admit that even as a human I had a god complex, but I respect free will. Just as emotions form an integral part of humanity, free will also does that. Once a person loses his free will, he is more of a tool than anything. My desire is not for a world full of tools, but of a world full of humans with humility. I can be called a hypocrite for saying that since display little humility, but I don't care. The imperial prison, the laws you created for your kingdom and you putting Mei and Gaara in your council. Hagoromo mused loudly. I see. I think I'm beginning to understand now. Now, then, allow me to explain to you how I can become a human again. Capital of the Imperial Kingdom. For 3 whole days Kuretsuki has been wondering about the capital of the Imperial Kingdom without anyone watching her. It infuriated her to know that she was allowed to wander within the capital without anyone watching her movements. That was just daring and it sent the wrong message to her. As far as things stood, she was an enemy of this kingdom, and yet she was allowed to leave the Crystal Palace without anyone guarding her. It seemed like they were sending her a message of that she was not a threat to be supervised, or that they knew she couldn't do anything. What these people were doing was practically allowing a thief into their home, and then allows him to wander off without any form of security to keep him from doing anything he wasn't supposed to do. It could be that she just wasn't able to sense anyone who was shadowing her movements. There could be people who just couldn't be detected. However, Kuretsuki liked to believe that she would know if someone was shadowing her movements. If there was someone within this kingdom who could avoid her senses, then that wasn't a good thing. One thing Kuretsuki was positive about was that the security of this place was tight. She felt isolated within this place, there was no one she could speak to, and any attempt to form contact with the outside has resulted in failure. Somehow, she was set off from the people she left outside the walls of the capital. No wonder they allowed her stroll around as she pleases. The fact that she couldn't contact anyone from the outside frustrated Kuretsuki, even so when there was no one she could speak to. The place that felt like a prison was the Crystal Palace. The guest quarters within the place were made in such a way that it was deathly silent. What happened within the walls of her given quarters stayed within, nothing got out. Even though there was ruckus in front of her door, she wouldn't hear a thing. Yes, the inside of her quarters made her feel like she was trapped in an unnamed island. The air outside the palace was bearable. No, it was in fact much more lively. Though she hated admitting that the place was good to its people and looked happy, she couldn't deny the fact. Kuretsuki tried looking hard for something that would make everything look as an illusion. Evil deeds were often covered a thick cloud of happiness. The streets could be filled with happy people during day, and by night, vultures of all kinds could be creeping out of their burrows to venture about, searching for prey. Perhaps the thought that a man she didn't like could lead such a happy nation infuriated her to no ends. Perhaps it was the fact that the leadership of this country did much more for their people other than her grandfather did for his people. This leadership was not filled with injustice and full of greedy fools who only wanted to become rich. The leadership of this place was actually made of good people. It sickened her to even admit it. So much she just wanted to run back home and crawl into her bed and lie under the comfort of her sheets. Perhaps then her stomach would settle and she would forget this overwhelming nightmare. What had infuriated Kuretsuki much more was the fact that Naruto had the guts to stand her up for 3 days. She didn't demand to meet with him, she had politely requested to speak to him, and yet for 3 damn days she's been wandering about without a word from him. The only person who was giving her anything was Gurren, but Kuretsuki got the feeling that the woman didn't like her very much. Perhaps she was thinking she'd come to steal her emperor. Such a thought was ludicrous. Heaven would spit out rain for all eternity if she suddenly birthed romantic interest in someone like Naruto. The 4th day arrived, and the emperor had found it in his grace to speak to her. What Kuretsuki did know was that Naruto didn't come down here that often. He obviously spent much of his time at the sky, in the comfort of his palace. No doubt today was the day he'd woken up in the left hand of his bed, and so he decided to come down here and dwell in the presence of lowly humans. Yeah, right. Kuretsuki snorted in thought as she was being led towards the throne room. She expected the walls of the place to be painted with gold, since all imperial palaces wear gold-like clothing. But in this place, there was none of it. In all the areas she'd seen, there was no gold anywhere. Aside from the crystals, which came from Gurren's ability, there was nothing, other than the red and dark blue colors that painted the walls of the palace. She reached the large halls of the throne room. The man escorting her didn't enter with her, he simply directed her inside before leaving her alone. When she entered, there was no one inside. The throne, still no gold on it, it was completely made of crystals, but the color was dark blue, was empty. The granddaughter of the Tsuchikage nearly vented her frustrations by rushing over to the throne and kicking it. He was said to have called her here, and yet he was going to make her wait. Hasn't she waited enough already? Before Kuretsuki could explode, Naruto waked into the room. His attire was still as he'd been wearing recently. The truth-seeking balls just weren't with him, and so was his shakujo. He wasn't blonde anymore, Kuretsuki thought. Well, recent reports have been saying he wasn't blonde anymore. Black seemed to be the theme about everything from him. She'd expected him to be wearing a golden crown to show his status as emperor, yet he had none of it. Kuretsuki stared deep as he walked towards her, unblinking. The footsteps seemed gentle. In fact, he wasn't even making a sound as he touched the floor with his feet. Perhaps it was because he wasn't wearing any shoes, his feet were both adorned in bandages, and the soft fabric that covered the floor silenced everything. Naruto stopped just in front of the black-haired woman. He was just inches away from her. Her body had now grown tense, yet her eyes still stared at him with unwavering confidence and determination. He said nothing, but looked amused at her stance before he just walked past her. Kuretsuki swirled around to follow him with her eyes. She sent a glare at his back, not even a hello after making me wait for this long. She drawled out. It wasn't intended to be loud enough for Naruto to hear, but he heard her nonetheless. Naruto didn't stop, but Kuretsuki was positive he heard her. He finally sat down his throne, and faced her calmly. This is my house, I am royalty in here and you are a guest. Isn't it customary for guests or anyone for that matter to greet the owner of the house when he returns? The words left his mouth rather smoothly, no trace of any anger or anything to signify his displeasure with her words. Kuretsuki glared, but didn't comment on it. She was here for peace talks. Getting worked up about everything wouldn't be good at all. Even though Naruto was sort of right, she wasn't going to bow before him. Screw the fact that he was an emperor. She was Kuretsuki, the granddaughter of the Yondaime Tsuchikage, and was in line to become the Godaime Tsuchikage. She wasn't going to bow to simply bow to anyone, just for the sake of it. She had her pride and dignity. No way was she going to throw it out of the palace because she was standing before Naruto. I thought you were not going to come down here. If today had passed without anything, I would have just left, Kuretsuki said, changing the subject. Despite her dislike of the man she was speaking to, she still held her composure and spoke in a controlled manner. Gurren is the prime minister of this country. You're supposed to speak to her since she handles not only internal affairs but also external affairs that relate to this kingdom, Naruto responded with a calm tone, yet kept a firm stare at the woman before him. She told me that, but I wanted to speak to you directly. I doubt she would have solved our matters, Kuretsuki spoke in a firm tone. Though his stare was beginning to unsettle her, she still maintained her composure. You are downplaying Gurren's position as prime minister and disregarding the order of things, Kuretsuki. You don't request audience with the emperor without talking whatever you wish with the prime minister. The emperor should be sought after or for things that are beyond the minister's pay grade. Naruto stated, a bit sternly. However, since I don't wish for any future conflicts with Owagakur, and would rather not be entangled in battles that don't entertain me, I'm forced to permit this. Well, that wasn't expected. Still, Kuretsuki wasn't going to apologize. I wasn't aware things were done like that, and that was all she said. She did note he wasn't apologizing for making her wait. Since he wasn't apologizing, she was also not going to do it either. Naruto stared at her for a few tense moments. He then spoke, I know what you want, so spell it out. That just made things difficult. How was she going to put things now since he put it like that? Did he just do that on purpose just to make her nervous or just to see how she would handle the pressure? His expression gave away nothing, other than looking at her expectantly, waiting for her response. Just before she could respond, Naruto's look became a bit amused at watching her struggle in her thoughts. Kuretsuki didn't hold back a glare at his behavior. I will make things easy for you, he said. You wish for peace between Owagakur and the Imperial Kingdom. You do not wish for things to reach a point where there will be a battle. However, with this desire, you also do not wish to be kneeling before me. Kuretsuki nodded. I only want to discuss things in a more equal ground. I care for my village, and I'm not stubborn as my grandfather. I wish for the tensions to end, though, it appeared that the tensions were only in Owagakur. I don't want anything like what happened to Konoha happen to Owagakur. What happened to Konoha happened because I had some matters to deal with it. I have no desire to attack any village. I've grown tired of trampling down on weak shinobi, and I'm not that bad of a person to seek destruction without a cause. Kuretsuki nodded, she would take his word. The emperor wasn't the one to be subtle. I'm willing to do anything to assure you that I'm serious and have no intentions of starting trouble with you. I'd even go as far as offer my hand in marriage, to you, to keep things peaceful between Owagakur and this country. Naruto raised a brow at her words. Marriage. Oh. I forget such a thing can be used to form bonds and ensure that connections between two villages stand in a peaceful way, Naruto mused loudly before standing up from his throne. He walked up to the silent woman. Don't sell yourself like that woman. You obviously dislike me, and wouldn't think twice of a me. I have no desire to force things over. As long as you keep your end, I won't do anything. Kuretsuki felt her insides twist. It felt like he was rejecting her. She'd offered herself to him, and yet he'd rejected her like she was a piece of rotten meat. Do be insulted, if you offer yourself to me who will lead a Wagakur. I see you becoming Tsuchikage soon, very soon. I also have no interest in making you submit to anything. Now return to a Wagakur, plan things over and return with Onoki. We will discuss things then. However, if you wish to cross me, I'll erase your existence, Naruto said smiling. You wouldn't believe he'd just threatened someone. Now be on your way to your grandfather. My other guests have arrived. Just then, two people entered, Sasuke and Nagato. Kuretsuki nodded. I'll contact you after I've spoken to my grandfather. She left the room without saying anything further. Naruto returned to his throne after Kuretsuki made her exit. Both Nagato and Sasuke walked a bit closer to the throne and stood in silence before Sasuke spoke. I was starting to think you didn't want to see me, the Uchiha spoke in an even tone, looking straight at the emperor. He had been here for 2 days straight, and the former blonde had yet to speak with him. He only spoke to Gurren, who seemed to be aware that he was coming. It wasn't much of a surprise that Naruto would know he was coming to the capital. Naruto felt tempted to question if that was how one addressed a king, but he shrugged it off. This was definitely the work of Kaguya's personality. The woman was of nobility, and given her status as a princess, she liked being treated as she was, a princess. I had important things to deal with, how so like Naruto to make one feel like what one had to say was nothing of importance. You're uncertain of the future since I seem to be in the center of it all, hence your presence here. Sasuke nodded. I have a lot of questions that I must ask. But most of all, I'm worried about the future that will greet us after all that has happened. You have the capabilities to shaping the world in any form you want. So, I want to know if you're an enemy or an ally. Nagato remained quiet. This was an interesting start of things. He wasn't expecting the raven-haired Uchiha to be so bold in front of the emperor. Perhaps it was because the man wasn't scary as he was before. Ho, interesting, Naruto started before standing up. He walked over to the two men before him. He looked at Nagato. I will give you my second eye. You'll be in possession of it until you've succeeded in the path you've decided to take. Although it is only my left eye, it should be enough. What happened to my eyes? Nagato asked, speaking for the first time. Naruto had said he would give him his eyes. But now he was saying that he was going to give his eyes. I got overexcited and made Madara disappear, Naruto stated in a simple manner, like it wasn't much of a big deal. Sasuke snorted. He was there when Naruto did it. And Madara was just beside him when Naruto turned him to ash. But my eye will do. Nagato shook his head. As long as it will be enough, I won't complain, he said. Naruto nodded. You will be out for 72 hours. Your body spent much of time in that pathetic condition, and to be able to move freely, and for those Uzumaki genes in you make you live a long life, I have to restore your body to a perfect condition. I wasn't able to completely revitalize you after I brought you back from the S. Naruto then touched Nagato on his C and the man disappeared. A clone of his was waiting for the man in his other home. The clone would do the operation, and up there was where no one would be able to bother Nagato while he recovered. The silent atmosphere would also do well for the god of Omegakure. With the silence, he would be able to think clearly, without anyone influencing his thoughts. The emperor then turned to Sasuke. Whether I'm to be your enemy or ally remains your choice. It depends much on how you plan to deal with things from now on. On the outside, you look to be cleaning the world of its evil by imprisoning criminals who are roaming freely around the world, Sasuke stated calmly, staring back at Naruto. That is indeed correct, Naruto admitted before returning to his throne. For the next few years, I'll live. However, if this world is about to be changed, I will not be the one to do it. It isn't that it is beyond me, I'm just not the right person to change the world. Although much of this world disgusts me, I have no desire to create the perfect world. Well, that wasn't entirely true. If you want to know whether I'll be an enemy or ally, go to Sunagakure or Kirigakure to seek answers. Mei and Gaara's world of desire is alike. The world that those two desire, is the world that my power will help create and protect. Sasuke waited until Naruto settled down on his throne. I didn't think you'd be the one to follow other people's ideals. Naruto never liked to dance to anyone's music. Yes, he even admitted it himself. He doesn't follow anyone's rules, he sets his own rules and follows them. His thought inability to follow other people has led him to believe that it has something to do with his abundant pride and ego. Naruto deemed himself to be above all humans. What would that make of him if he followed other people? It does appear that way, Naruto said, looking thoughtful. But that is not what it is in reality. I won't explain anything about that. I'd like to see the Uchiha clan restored, though. Can't you restore it? Sasuke asked with a raised brow. Naruto was Uchiha just like him. He should be able to restore the Uchiha clan. Well, that would be if the black-haired wants to. He thought the Emperor would help with the restoration since he had the same bi as him. Naruto shook his head. I forget that you don't know everything. But it is within possibilities to birth Uchiha children. He possessed Senju and Uchiha DNA, as well as Uzumaki. But even possessing the DNA, he wasn't sure if both DNAs would pass on to his children for them to become like him. While it may be possible for them to possess both DNAs, the Rinnegan wasn't something he believed would be passed on. It was also a possibility that his children will have neither Senju nor Uchiha DNA within them. He possessed both DNAs, but his evolution had caused both DNAs to fuse and create the original gene that formed both clans. What do you mean, Uchiha children? Sasuke questioned in a deep tone, looking deep into Naruto's eyes, trying to understand the meaning of his words. There was a deep message between those words and he just couldn't figure out what it was. It is nothing to concern yourself with. Naruto responded in a slight dismissive tone. Tell me, Sasuke, what would you do if my kingdom turns out to be what you hate for this world, and something that is contrary to your ideal world? If more than anything, Naruto was merely curious. He was certain that Sasuke would attempt to do something about it if they were to become enemies. But given that he is yet to see him as an enemy, it means that the Uchiha holds no grudges for his actions towards Konoha. Well, despite Konoha being his home, Sasuke didn't hold any strong love for the former great hidden village. What I can, the Sharingan began to spin and then morphed into the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. As Uchiha, I should be able to KO you. I may not be able to do it now, but I know the key will be my eyes. You're not invincible to every technique of the Sharingan. Ho, you are rather bold to declare something like that before me. I could KO you now, and be done with. A smile was on Naruto's face when the words escaped his teeth. This was some sort of entertainment to him. The fact irked Sasuke greatly, but he remained calm. I know you won't do anything. You don't see a threat in anyone that is weaker than you. You forget something, power alone doesn't do it. You can be outsmarted and fall into a simple trick that will see you trapped in a prison where your power will not save you. The confidence was just seeping out of Sasuke like drool flowing out of a sleeping beauty. You're basically telling me that I'm arrogant, and this arrogance will eventually be my downfall, Naruto stated rather calmly. The Sharingan holds many mysteries, and can do many abilities. Fuinjutsu is also very capable. It is the only thing that can keep me down. However, you need both to actually threaten me. The Emperor paused for a moment before he continued. Sasuke, do you really think I don't know this? Do you really believe that I would be stupid enough to be caught in Fuinjutsu? Let me tell you, I've studied the art of sealing, and I tell you, I know what it can do. I know you, and I know that your knowledge of the Uchiha eyes isn't compared to mine. I'm not saying you don't know, Sasuke said, smiling a bit. You know, you just ignore the threats. The fact that there was a warning sign on the door didn't stop Naruto from entering. No, he ignored the warning signs and walked in. It was always like that with him, he didn't adhere to warnings put by other people. So you think in one of these days, if I become your enemy, you're going to be standing behind these threats, and they might actually be of trouble? Naruto stated, rather than question. You seem rather confident that you can do it. That is because I am, Sasuke responded firmly. Now tell me, Naruto, was it really necessary to divide Konoha like that? I mean, you've broken the village into two and banished those people from their homes. Wasn't destroying Konoha enough? Though I have no love for those people, I do think you were somewhat vengeful in your actions despite saying otherwise. If it was revenge other than purifying those people, then you're more cold-hearted than I thought you were. Well, I'm not complaining about anything. But still, did you really have no thought of revenge? Sasuke, everything became still. Sasuke felt his skin tighten at the tone of the man calling his name. His thoughts came to a halt and the sole objective his mind prioritized was to listen and understand what Naruto was saying. I've indulged you long enough. Leave before I find you to be a sore to my sight. The words left Naruto's lips rather smoothly. Whether he'd overstepped some boundaries, Sasuke wasn't going to wait around to find out. He had one more question before leaving, though. What of that man? What part is he to this kingdom? That man could only be Nagato. He is a man who wishes for peace. Perhaps he may be the one who finds stable peace for this world. He may even succeed me as emperor one day. Nagato had a strong life force due to his Uzumaki heritage. The man was bound to live a long life. Given the long lifespan that man was going to live, Naruto had decided the man would take charge over him after some time. If he does have children, then they would take over from him, Nagato, not from him, Naruto. I see. Sasuke turned around to leave. His head held high. Then I'll speak to him once he recovers. Naruto leaned a little to the left, placed his left hand on the armpit of his throne. He then rested his left cheek on the left hand's palm. He watched Sasuke calmly, as the raven-haired Uchiha left his sight with his head held high. Once the Uchiha was out of his sight, Naruto closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, Samui was standing in front of his throne, eyes fixed at him with her hands folded atop of her bust. You're acting like a child, she said in a monotone voice that left no evidence of her thoughts about his behavior. She wasn't asking him a question either, she was merely stating a fact. What gives you that idea? Samui didn't respond, not before she walked over to him. She went to his right side before leaning against the throne while standing. Kuretsuki, you could have handled things differently. You made her wait just so you could see how she would react to it, and you don't really need anything convincing to be of no enemy to Iwa. You could have just told her to speak to Gurren so they could talk things through. You only made things uneasy for her for your amusement and you don't really want to talk to Onoki, yet you're making Kuretsuki bring him here anyway. The fact that Sasuke brought up your actions towards Konoha didn't make you mad. No, you only made it appear that way to see his reaction, and you just wanted him to leave, but you just didn't want to tell him to leave in a nice way. I'm also curious why you're giving Nagato your second eye, the eye Madara had stolen. You could have given him Hagoromo's power, which you took from Sasuke. I'm led to believe that you still have it in your possession. Samui watched Naruto carefully as he absorbed all her words. She had no problems with his behavior. Regardless of what he did, before her eyes, Naruto will always be Naruto. She had known that he was a little childish, despite often calling most people children. I've always been like this. I wouldn't call it being childish, but it is all right. Naruto responded without surprise. If I don't do things this way, I'll become bored rather quickly and I don't know what I'd do if I became bored with this life. Well, you could always get more involved in the daily responsibilities of your country, Samui suggested looking at the former blonde at the corner of her eyes. If he became involved more than he would always have something to keep him busy. He wouldn't lack any form of activity to do. Naruto shook his head slightly. I'd rather not, he said. Why are you watching me anyway? Samui shrugged. I was bored at Kumo since Sama has been sulking for the past days. You also aren't bothering me with anything to do, she said. What is next then? My marriage to Mei, Naruto responded. Things with Yugao are in a bad situation and I don't want to fix them. You're only saying that because trying to work things with Yugao will require that you make S, Samui said, shaking her head. He made it sound like he just didn't want to fix things, but that wasn't the truth. Believe what you want, Naruto said with a shrug. How do you suppose we plan this wedding with Mei? I don't know, Samui said. You're rather cold, Naruto. How can you ask me about this subject when I think I should be the one to marry you since I know you better than the Mizukage? Naruto shook his head and stood up. Whether she was being serious or not, he wasn't going to indulge, not now anyway. He had more things to worry about. He faced Samui for a moment before turning his heels. Walk with me, he said. Samui followed Naruto from behind without saying a word. New Konoha. Regardless of how much they tried to adjust and make this a little of their old home, it just wasn't working. The mind and senses were already accustomed to the warm breath Konoha always breathed. But this new air was different, it wasn't anything like Konoha. How could they forget the beloved home? How could this place be like their former home? It may look like the old Konoha, but it was an entirely different thing. Even a 5-year-old child can tell that much. Not everyone was excessively furious about losing the home they'd grown up at. The new surrounding was welcomed by some, and hated by many. The old cloth needed to be replaced, even if it wasn't worn out. Well, it was no longer usable after what Naruto did to it. Shikamaru was a little indifferent to the whole thing. He wasn't complaining about the new village. The mistake he would make while in this new home would be comparing it to the old and trying to live like it was still the old. This was their new home, not the old, and as such, he believed to accept this place and be able to live freely, one had to see this as a new cloth to wear. Everything was different, everyone was now different. Most people were bitter, and getting drunk often. The wells of alcohol were running low because almost everyone was a drinker these days. The mood around the village was somewhat gloomy, and it was depressing to walk around the streets. People just didn't have the same smiles they used to have back in their old village. It was only a matter of time though. Eventually, they would realize that being bitter wasn't going to do them any good. Yes, being bitter was only going to leave them shallow and miserable while Naruto danced happily on his throne. Being happy within the village wasn't doing Naruto favors, but it was doing themselves a favor by accepting the reality and moving on. No one would deny them their right to be angry. It was reasonable that they be angry. But allowing their anger to get in the way of their happiness would only lead to the fall of this village. If people chose to be happy, this village would grow again and prosper. But if all that rang within their temples were thoughts of nothing would be accomplished, and in a few years, this village would fall. Shikamaru sighed as walked up to his friends. They were sitting together in a group at their stamped spot and hiding place. The place was nothing but a small clearing in the middle of a large forest, the new forest of death. We've been waiting for you, Shikamaru, typical of Ino to say something like that upon his entrance, even though he wasn't late. Shikamaru sighed, again. Well, some things will never change, he thought looking around the group, minus Sasuke. Give me a break, Ino, the Nara said sitting on Chuji's right side, completing their new circle of friends. The new circle didn't include Sasuke since he seemed to be more focused on things high above them. It wasn't that the Uchiha didn't appear to think of himself as high above everyone else, but now, even a blind man can see that the Uchiha had put himself high above all things. He never even bothered to do anything with them. He was always busy about this and that. It wasn't a secret to everyone that Sasuke was often leaving the village to the Imperial Kingdom. Shikamaru was under no illusions that the Uchiha was working towards something to form a healthy relationship between Naruto's kingdom and New Konoha. As far as he was concerned, Naruto didn't give a dime about Konoha and wouldn't care to make sure everything was okay. Shikamaru works harder than all of us, Ino, Sakura said in response to her friend's typical choice of words. I think you should at least give him a break. While it may be something that no one would have ever thought possible, Shikamaru working harder than all of them, it was actually happening. Well, technically, Neji worked harder than all of them combined, but the Hyuga has always been a hard worker. Shikamaru on the other hand was a lazy bum who wouldn't mind cloud gazing for the rest of his troublesome life. It was actually a surprise to see him work as hard as he was. It was even hard when his father was pushing a lot of things on his shoulders and his mother didn't better things. Sometimes Sakura felt sorry for the poor Nara. Not even Tsunade would make her sweat as much as Shikamaru's mother forces him. Ino folded her hands across her bust. Well anyway, she said shrugging off Sakura's reasons. I was thinking we party tonight, everything will be there, sake and any form of entertainment. My dad gave me permission to do whatever I want at the house. Everyone stared at the blonde for a few moments before Tenten spoke. Is it wise to party at this given situation? And what would be the reason to party? The situation didn't call for any celebrations. In fact, they should be grieving right about now. Their beloved home was destroyed for Christ's sake. It didn't matter if they were given a new home by the bastard who destroyed their old home, Tenten didn't give a about that. The fact of the matter is that Naruto destroyed their home and drove much of Konoha's people insane. I think it will actually be a good idea, Hinata said without so much as stuttering. The party would lighten up the tense mood around them and often gloomy thoughts. Right about now, they could use something to soothe the grieving souls. Kiba nodded, not only because Hinata thought it was a good idea. No, he was happy about it. The party would help him release some pent-up stress and perhaps help him sleep well without any thoughts of Naruto. He'd been having those many thoughts recently, and if the fact that he often found himself laughing by himself, and if that wasn't disturbing enough, he actually saw himself sucking out the former blonde's be like a vampire and take over his kingdom. I'm up for it, the Inuzuka said grinning. Why do you think it'll be a good idea, Hinata-san? Shino questioned, looking over at the former Hyuga heiress. He could guess what she was thinking, but to be accurate, he needed to hear it from her. Shikamaru answered for Hinata. The mood around the village is somewhat depressing, and that doesn't do well for our health. People are bitter and they've forgotten how to have fun because of everything that has happened. As troublesome as this is, I think it will be a good idea. If there is loud music and loud noises during the night, people will see that despite everything that has happened, they can still be happy. Wow, Shikamaru, always the calculating one, Ino said. Shikamaru looked evenly at Ino. Didn't you think of this when you planned for the part? Ino shook her head. No. I was only thinking about having fun. We haven't had some fun in a long time and it's getting to me. I can't stand the atmosphere within the village sometimes. Yes, sometimes Ino felt like leaving the village on a quest to find some happy place. Sakura shook her head looking at her friend. I'm in, she said. She wasn't exactly depressed about anything. Nothing much in her life had changed. She still woke up and helped at the hospital. Though the place was different, the routine she followed was still the same. As long as there is food, I'm in, Chuji gave a typical response. Well, that was something that hasn't changed. We also have to find something to bind Lee. I know he's gonna end up putting alcohol inside his mouth, and I don't want to deal with him then, Tenten said, glaring at the green Jonin. Lee looked hurt by her words, but otherwise said nothing. If we weren't doing it at my house, I wouldn't have a problem with it. However, I would rather not have my house destroyed. If that happens, my dad is going to be furious with me, and he may even ban me from hosting any party. Ino said, smiling at the thought of something from the old village actually happening at this new home. You're a real daddy's girl, Ino, Sakura said quietly. I'm not. You can't deny that, Ino, everyone knows this. You've always been daddy's little girl, Shikamaru said rather plainly. A round of nods followed suit. Shut up, Shikamaru, Ino yelled, throwing an object that smacked the Nara straight on his face. Shikamaru hit the ground in a thud. Well, that was something to laugh about. Flashback. I've said that I want to live as a human happily. However, in this current form, I can't do any of that, Naruto said looking straight at Hagoromo. How do you suppose I'll make myself human? Hagoromo shook his head. He had ideas, but he wasn't going to give them to Naruto. I'm sure you already have something planned, he said. That I do, Naruto confirmed. However, it isn't anything original. Naruto paused for a moment, gathering all his thoughts. You used creation of all things ability to give your idea a form. The Rinnegan, control over yin and yang chakra, helped you give form to your imaginations. Just as you created you tools, I've also created tools of my own. I'm not human, but I do possess bits of humanity inside of me. In fact, the human parts of me form the basis of my being. Well, I was human in the beginning. Using the creation of all things, I can also separate the human part of my being and leave the inhuman part separated. Tell me, Hagoromo, when you look at me with your third eye, what do you? Naruto asked. A beast with 11 tails, this, you, that is sitting on the throne, is nothing but an illusion before the third eye, Hagoromo stated. He understood that the beast was Naruto's true form. This form that Naruto showed was nothing but a human mask. His true form was a large 11-tailed beast that seemed to be exactly like the Juubi. Your third eye shows the truth in me. What you see is my real form, the form that isn't human. Naruto confirmed Hagoromo's thoughts. What I want to do is make this my real body, by separating my humanity from what you see. What seems to be the problem, then? Hagoromo asked, knowing that if there wasn't a problem, Naruto would have done what he wanted already. If I separate the human part of my being, my soul will also leave to dwell in the human body. The husk of me will turn into the holy tree without my soul. You see, without my soul, the power that will remain will run wild. It will be like the 10 tails running rampant all over again. So to manage this, my husk will turn into the holy tree. By turning myself into a human, I will forfeit my immortality and will eventually avoiding death would be merging with the holy tree before but I don't think I'll be able to regain this form again. I'll most likely be stuck as the holy tree until I've sucked all chakra from humans. If I don't want to be stuck as the holy tree until my existence withers away, I can forget about being human and continue as I am. However, as I continue to take away chakra from humans, my existence will grow too powerful for this world to handle and I will lose my form if I don't escape to another world. Possibilities of becoming whole again after fusing with the holy tree were low. It was something that even he didn't understand. Naruto had thought he would be able to combine all parts of him after his time as a human was over and return to this state, but things didn't appear to work in that way. However, if he was able to somehow contain his inhuman part from going berserk, he could still become what he was. Keeping his inhuman part in his core dimension wouldn't do it. It would only make it unstable after some time because of the massive outpouring of power. Sealing that part of him into the moon was an option. But Naruto didn't want to do things in the same way as Hagoromo did. The only timeline of events that would follow would be the one that he told the sage and nothing more or less. Hagoromo was silent for a few moments. This revelation changed everything and depending on Naruto's answer, it would change he viewed Emperor. Given all that was said to him, he could understand his successor quite well, even more if he offers the right answer to his question. What is your choice? That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.